The Gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ according to Luke chapter 16, beginning at the first verse. Jesus said to his disciples, "A rich man had a steward who was reported to him for squandering his property. He summoned him and said, 'What is this I hear about you? Prepare a full account of your stewardship, because you can no longer be my steward.' The steward said to himself, 'What shall I do now that my master is taking the position of steward away from me? I am not strong enough to dig, and I am ashamed to beg. I know what I shall do, so that when I am removed from the stewardship, they may welcome me into their homes.' He called in his master's debtors one by one. To the first he said, 'How much do you owe my master?' He replied, 100 measures of olive oil.' He said to him, 'Here is your promissory note. Sit down and quickly write one for 50. Then to another he said, 'And you, how much do you owe?' He replied, 100 measures of wheat.' He said to him, 'Here is your promissory note. Write one for 80. And the master commended that dishonest steward for acting prudently. For the children of this world are more prudent in dealing with their own generation than the children of light." The parables Jesus spoke, again, were all drawn from the experience of life with which he and his hearers would have been familiar. All of human life is in these stories, what we might call the good, the bad, and the ugly. Many of the characters in the stories that Jesus told leave a lot to be desired. That is certainly true of the parable in today's gospel reading. A wealthy landlord entrusted the care of his estate to a steward or a manager. This particular steward took advantage of the absence of the landlord to enrich himself dishonestly. Eventually, as often happens, his dishonesty caught up with him. The landlord came to hear of what was happening and called him in and gave him his notice. What the dishonest steward does next showed that he had some redeeming feature. He called in the landlord's debtors who worked the land, and he reduced their debt to the landlord, perhaps by canceling what he had planned to take for himself. In that way, he hoped to make friends with these tenants, so that when he lost his job, they might look favorably upon him. He was still acting out of self-interest, but in a slightly more enlightened way. Jesus saw something of merit in the actions of this rather shady character. A moment of crisis brought home to him that some things were more important than acquiring wealth for himself, such as the friendship and hospitality of others. The landlord ends up praising his dishonest steward for his astuteness, his wisdom. What is Jesus saying to us through this story? The crisis that the steward found himself in brought a shift in his values. This can happen for us too. Jesus is calling on us to value people more than possessions and to use our material resources in the service of others, especially those in greatest need. Our values are to be in line with the Lord's values, and it is people he values more than anything else.